Hello. 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 Okay.
Hello. I don't know. Is this working? Yeah.
Good morning. Hi everyone. It's great to be here. My first time doing a event, chairing of an event on a yacht in Cannes. So, wow. Look at me, Mum. I made it. This is awesome. So it's a great panel, Investing in Truth, why brands should support quality journalism. So I'm Dominic Ponsford. I'm the editor-in-chief of Press Gazette. We're the sort of, how can I put it? We're a big fish in a small pond in the sense that we're the biggest publisher who's writing about the business of news globally. So, I mean, in terms of people that just do that. So there's more than you'd realise actually, but we got a decent audience in our little world, and we'd definitely like to cover a bit more of this. So I'm just going to ask my panellists to say a quick hello and tell us who you are.
Hi everybody, I'm Sam Mellor. I am Vice President of Commercial Marketing and Enterprise Growth for the BBC.
Hi there, I'm Sarah Jones. I'm Director of Planning at Sky Media, and I also chair a group of people called the News Alliance, who are there to champion news across the UK industry.
And I'm Jean-Christophe Peube, Chief Operating Officer for Equativ, and as part of that, running quality, which is fighting against fraud, but as well disinformation and ensuring good quality content on our marketplace.
Brilliant. And just before we get into it, so can you just give us the thing on what the News Alliance is? It sounds like a great endeavour. You were telling me about it. It's quite a new thing and very key to this whole chat, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, it started about a year ago. We're at a Sky News dinner, and we were all complaining about this kind of just declining interest in news from an advertising perspective at a time when it's so big from an audience point of view. So we sort of snowballed a group of people together. We've now got people across all different channels, and all the trade bodies that represent each of those channels in the UK. So think Books, Radio Centre. We've got Newsworks in there as well, the PPA that represent all the magazines. And yeah, we've kind of set a mission to reverse the declining investment in news, starting to pick up a bit of traction, which is good.
Brilliant. Okay, so when I first joined Press Gazette, which was many years, 20 years ago plus, the news industry, so publishers, magazines, and so on, were about 40% of the advertising market, so of the UK advertising market. I think now, I think they're about 2 or 3%, something like that, in terms of the ad spend. So if you come to Cannes 20 years ago, I'm sure it would have been News Beach over there, rather than like Meta and Google Beach. So I think what we're trying to talk about this morning is how we can get a News Beach next year at Cannes. That's what we want. Like
At least a yacht.
yeah, or at least a yacht, or maybe a pedalo, something. We'd love it. So how can we get brands? It seems obvious to me that that the clever people are reading the news. They're affluent people, successful people. They should be the sort of people that brands want to get in front of. And beyond that, we kind of, unless we support like reality, we're all screwed, aren't we? Because we're just going to be like in a world of unreality where we don't know what's real. So there's an ethical imperative there, but it must be good for the brands themselves. But over to you to make the case, Sam, if you want to go first. Why should brands spend a bit more money with the BBC, with Sky, with other great journalism outfits?
Yeah, so in terms of BBC and the commercial opportunity therein, we operate ex-UK. In the UK, obviously, we are a public service, and public service values guide all of our decision making. Transparency, the pursuit of truth with no agenda. Trust, obviously, is core to our brand, core to what we do, and core to how we think about engaging and growing our audience base. News is a genre of storytelling. We are a global storytelling powerhouse. A lot of people don't know that BBC has we make Bluey, for example. A lot of people don't know. Baby Reindeer came from our studios. Some of the biggest television hits come from our studios. So, and I say this because it's a very diverse storytelling based brand. And in doing that, it means that we have the opportunity to understand audience behavior and perceptions and interests and engagement across all sorts of storytelling. News is a type of storytelling. News is a genre of content. Now, you asked, how do we get brands to be more invested in news? First of all, we're not going to build a business off of a moral imperative. I think if I asked everybody to close their eyes and imagine a day without news, without trusted information that allows you to make an informed decision for yourself, for those around you, in the right context that impacts you, you would see a pretty bleak picture. But what I think we need to do is change the dialogue and change the conversation. News is continually put in a position, this industry continues to be put in a position where we are having to defend ourselves. We're having to defend ourselves, particularly against brand suitability, against brand safety, which the premise of which is false. There is not proven negative association with a brand that advertises in news. In fact, it is quite the opposite. Countless data proves that, in fact, a brand is seen as more trustworthy, as innovative, and people are more likely to buy and recommend a brand if they invest in news. Okay, so we've touted those statistics. People know the research. People also understand that the audiences in news are highly affluent, as you say. They're invested. News is an enormous category. It's not just hard and breaking news. It's multi-genre. So we've also talked about that, the value of audiences. We need to come to the table with swagger. That's how we change it. We come to the table with swagger, we talk about the audiences and their value, and we talk about the business impact. If you advertise in news, you're going to see high returns. We see plus 80% lifts in likelihood to recommend, likelihood to be seen as trustworthy, likelihood to be seen as an innovative brand for advertisers that work with us and spend in our ecosystem. And that's how we change the dialogue. We stop sort of allowing the progression of this narrative that news isn't safe and that we constantly have to defend ourselves, and we turn around and say, if you want to reach the most influential, the most premium, and the most valuable audiences arguably in the world, then you come to organizations that are providing that information that allows them to make business decisions, that allows them to make shopping decisions, that allows them to make travel decisions, and arguably guides where they spend their money. That's how we need to talk about this genre. That's how we need to talk about news.
Love it. Thanks for that. More swagger. Sarah, what do you think?
I mean, Sam's covered a lot there, so
Cover the bits that Sam missed out.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
This might be a soapbox that I really enjoy.
yeah. I mean, we've talked about the power of news from a content perspective. I think a lot of brands today want to be in culturally relevant content, and for some reason, cultural relevance has found its way into TikTok, and actually, TikTok doesn't provide cultural relevance. It provides temporary moments of interest and fun. But actually, news is culturally relevant 24/7. You know, there's things happening in the world that people really care about. And I think that's what that magnetism that news has is what makes it so exciting for consumers to read and but also for brands to get involved in. So, you know, I mean, I think the audience pool is huge. But I guess we've got so many reasons why. I think why people aren't investing in news is that money's just being funneled into other places, particularly into social media, and news is really at the, where money's being piled into the platforms. It's not being invested in the places that are making quality content, and so all publishers have got an issue with that because there isn't enough money to fund all of that brilliant programming or journalism or whatever it might be. But news happens to be at the very, very sharp end of that. News is suffering more than any other content is suffering because it's expensive to produce and it's difficult to make sure in a very fragmented environment that it's monetized in the best way. So yeah, many
thanks for that
barriers.
JC, I'm going to give you a slightly different twist on it if that's all right, but just because I imagine one of the challenges that if I was an ad buyer I might think, well, if I talk to Google, it's like one phone call, I imagine, or meta. It's probably an easy conversation to have. News is like a complicated landscape, isn't it? There's a lot going on. And I imagine if you're an ad buyer, it's like, well, where do I start? Who knows? Which I guess comes down to your sort of area of expertise a little bit. I might be wrong around the sort of data and access to the market.
And I guess if you're an ad buyer, you're under pressure right now. You've been under pressure for years, and you're under pressure for fast decisions, for like basically user conversions, but like it's metrics. And you're under pressure from a profitability standpoint as an ad buyer. Agencies are being pressured. And so what they have in front of them is platforms, and Equativ is one of them, where you have a lot of ways to buy, not a lot of time to make those decisions, and very often news may actually seem like yes, I want to buy there, but maybe it's a little bit more complex than other things that are easier and faster. And so let me just do the fast and furious like decision of buying quick, reaching my outcomes, and then feeling good about it. The issue is with just saying I want clicks or I want conversions, you may reach some audience, maybe not all of the audience potential, and you're not in the right context and not in the right moments to have an impact. And that's the issue. And with news, we know that users actually spend more time reading the content and have a better time looking at it than potentially on clickbait, made for advertising content, or other properties that are of lower quality. And so what we try to do is at Equativ is offer a platform where buyers can buy what they want, but there are specific filters that let them make the right decisions instead of going for the fast and easy decisions, but that may not be the right ones.
Okay. Now, I'm going to give you the opportunity to ask questions if you like, but I realise it may be quite early for some. It's early for all of us, really, probably, isn't it? So if people would rather just listen, that's fine. But is anyone thinking they might like to ask a question? Anyone sort of? I might ask you. Oh yeah, we've got a question here. Tell us who you are.
Brian Cullinan. I'm from a company called Video Elephant.
Yeah.
Isn't the big issue with advertising beside news is just it's inherently risky, and it's so hard to define news that no one wants to be beside bombing of Tehran or Gaza or whatever. And programmatically, that's the challenge, right?
So yes, but I think the way it's considered as risky is an idea that we had from the beginning of open web, and a lot of the open web initially, you didn't have the right tools to understand and target the content. So what you are doing is, as a buyer, is going for a huge list of block lists of any negative words that you may come up with, but then those exclude good content as well. And then at the same time, I was mentioning the aim and the search for performance. You are targeting the cheapest possible traffic that has the highest conversion possible, which is a much more risky in terms of fraud and poor content. And that's the only thing you could do. Nowadays, with initiatives like the green PMPs, with shorter supply paths to inventory, with as well platforms like Equativ banning MFA, I think you can actually make better decisions, and AI as well. You can actually make better decisions into targeting the right context, the right audience, the right moment for that audience without taking risks.
I'd also disagree with news being risky as an environment, full stop. Now, if it's been produced by a journalist they have to abide by a code of ethics. It's got editorial oversight. On social media in particular, anybody can upload anything at any point, and any advertising can end up next to that. We've seen some shocking cases of ads coming up next to child porn, abuse. I mean, there's a list as long as you could imagine on that. So, I just don't agree that it's risky, and I think what everybody. I worked in press about 23 years ago, and the worst thing that could happen is if you work for you're buying an ad for BA and it ends up next to a plane crash. Now, there's editorial oversight in journalism, in news, that stops that type of thing from happening. And it may have happened, a very few number of times in the, you count them on one hand in the history of the news. But the challenge is that when you advertise in digital, when you're not buying through a news organisation, you end up in a place where you are actually supporting terrorism, or you're actually supporting, you know, the people who are making content that isn't regulated, that hasn't been produced by journalists. So I think we need to kind of change, you know, to Sam's point, change the narrative around risky, because, you know, there's, aside from consumers, you know, they're not stupid. They understand that if you're advertising next to an article that's about Donald Trump, doesn't mean you endorse Donald Trump. It just means you're supporting the journalists that are finding out the news about Donald Trump, which I think is, you know, which is super important news that everybody really cares about. So yeah, we need to switch that narrative.
I agree with you. Just
Good question.
No, it's a good question. I was going to ask that myself, but I didn't need to. But do you want to respond to that one as well, Sam? Just like the BBC is obviously you know, covering a lot of difficult stuff, and you can, maybe it is understandable that some brands feel a bit like wobbly about being in the wrong place. But what do you think? How do you assure them about that?
I don't want to dismiss if the concerns are genuine. Let's say something did happen. Let's say an ad, a BA ad did end up next to a plane crash, or I don't want to be generally dismissive of concerns with, look, news isn't risky. I don't think that that's a sophisticated enough conversation. I recognize that concern. To your point, then you should have that concern everywhere. That should be your definition of risk. If your definition of risk is, I don't want to show up next to something that, inserts definition here, is destructive to society, incites violence, causes damage socially, make that definition apply to every platform, to every outlet, and have it be the guiding force for where you put your money. If that was what we were living in, if that's what we were dealing with, then I think that this whole conversation would be different. But it's not. News is in a chokehold, and we consistently have to push back and defend ourselves, which I talked about earlier. And I don't know, at least for me, I'm coming to the point where I almost don't want to entertain this conversation anymore. I work for one of the most storied, incredible, trusted organizations that produces news, that produces incredible storytelling, and I'm so grateful that it exists, and it adds so much to my life and our lives globally. It allows us to understand what's happening. It allows us to translate what's happening into meaningful context. It ensures that I can see around corners, that I can make good decisions. But I don't think that I need to make that case to advertisers. They're people. You know the role news plays. You know it's important. And if it's a quality outlet, you know the content is quality. So unless you're going to apply the same definition to everything, we're just in a doom spiral on this narrative, and we need to push our way out.
So the news industry was obviously quite a broad church, and you know, there's the BBC, but there's also, like, you know, there's popular brands.
It's only the BBC.
And Sky.
I mean, it's pretty big. It's got a pretty big audience. But the you know, there's a lot. If you're buying news, right, you've got to work across a whole bunch of different brands. So how can you be assured that you know, what you're doing is going to be good everywhere? Okay, so you might like the BBC, but you want to be you want to be in the Mirror, you want to be in, and there's, to be honest, to play devil's advocate, some publishers, you know, they, in order to get the traffic, they do stuff that's quite clickbaity. It's not wonderful to read, but they've kind of been forced to play that game, haven't they? Because they've been told that page views are everything. So how do you sort of give the ad buyers that assurance that what they're getting is going to be decent? And also, some news websites, same reason, to get the revenue, they often don't give readers a great experience because they're so, you know, so overburdened with advertising. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yeah. I'll let you have a go. JC, do you want to have a go?
Yeah, I think it depends on the publisher strategy. Some publishers are so much under pressure. So I was talking about the business pressure of an ad buyer, but actually publishers are under pressure. They are pressured on the supply side with, like, it's being stolen their audience with Google News. Like, you no longer own your audience at some point. And yeah, they're pressured financially like any other, and there's a lot more venues, a lot more like the development and usage of social media and other platforms that make it very, very difficult. And so it's very easy to say, at some point, I'll plug whatever I can that makes money on my website. And this is a very short-term strategy, because at some point you're struggling and you're yourself putting yourself in a vicious circle. What I would like publishers to do, and it's not necessarily easy, is to actually realize that they have to own deciding who monetizes the hard work content that they've put together with actually good professionals and journalists. And this is a strong decision to make, because it's not the easy way. It's very easy to say, I have this content, let me just find the fastest way to monetize it. But it's usually the wrong way. And actually getting to own back your destiny and your long-term monetization is actually a hard choice to do. So I don't know if you agree from BBC, but...
Yeah, I think the premise of what you're saying, and what I agree with, is if you work with a quality content publisher, then you don't have to necessarily worry about that. I think, look, publishers are under pressure, as you say. They need audiences. They need ad dollars to fund their work. And so, but I believe that you do that through content that is additive, that adds value, and that's how you get advertising to trust you. That's how that's how you capture and create value of your content in an open marketplace. And that's why the publishers that you're talking about, the CPMs are lower, because it's not quality content. I think that really is on the buyers to make the determination of, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? Do we want to be building relationships, or do we just want clicks? Do we want to be engaging with consumers in a meaningful capacity, or are we just trying to get outcomes, really fast outcomes? And it's just all about your strategic approach. And there are publishers out there that are creating content that is incredibly valuable, that will deliver that relationship, that will deliver those outcomes combined, but you have to pay more for it, and I think you should.
Okay, final question for you all, because we're running out of time. My sense is that the news industry is having a bit of a moment, a bit of an inflection point. I feel like publishers are talking to each other more than ever before, because they're staring down the barrel of Google Zero in 2 years' time, as that being a topic of discussion, which is quite a sobering thought, and obviously the AI and all that comes with that. So what? Let's finish with a call to action, not just for the people on this yacht, but for the global readers of Press Gazette. What is the thing that we can do to ensure that we've got a news beach next year, and a yacht, and publishers are getting a bigger share, the rightful share, I would say, of the ad market?
So our call to arms is to ask for news. At the moment, people are planning's increasingly become platform-based and audience-based rather than content-based. And I think we need to pull context back, remove the apathy, remove the lowest common denominator, and really ask CMOs, across who love news themselves more than anything else, get them to ask for news on their plans, and that will filter through and hopefully start to reverse the trend that we're seeing now.
Are we all agreed? Does anyone want to add to that, or is that a good point to end on? What do you think?
I think we just need to make high quality content easier to purchase and more visible, and explain why it's more expensive, because it is more expensive. When you have an actual journalist, even if his AI helped, he's still checking what AI comes up with, and it has you have a price for that, but the price is for truth, the price is for quality, the price is for society. And so yes, you don't make a moral arguments to do that, but still we have to explain why it's more expensive to buy that.
I agree with that. I completely agree with that. And I would add that I think technology is additive. We are using AI in really interesting ways. How can it help make our marketing assets more dynamic? How can it support efficiencies, like running through years of documentation? However, we also know that the flip side of technology and where we are right now is causing a massive amount of unease and a massive amount of distrust and a lot of concern that people are looking at what they're seeing online and they cannot tell if it is real or not. This is an incredible moment for trusted publishers and news organizations, because everything we create, you can trust. A person did it. It was invested in. There was a decision that was made. There was oversight that was applied to it. So we can play a really meaningful role in this moment. And I think if we can combine leaning into technology with bringing that trust, bringing that premium content to bear, we'll have a beach.
Okay. Next year. I'll hold you to it. Thanks, everyone. Look, thanks very much to Sarah Jones, Sam Mellor, JC, great panelists. Thanks very much to Equativ for hosting us and for the great work you're doing in the industry, supporting publishers. We appreciate it. Thanks very much.